Hey, welcome everyone. Simon Rosenberg from Hopium Chronicles. I'm here temporarily. I took a few days to get out of DC, not to stop working, but just to get out of town for a few days. Just needed a change of pace. I'm here at a friend's house and doing our second gathering of the week with a good friend. Joining us today is Anderson Clayton, a well-known friend of Hopium's, who is joining us from North Carolina today. Welcome, Anderson.
Hey Simon, how are you? And hello, Hopium. Welcome back. Thank y'all for having me.
Listen, I wanted to get together with you because, so first of all, you are the southernmost state with a Democratic governor and attorney general. You are in the midst of a crazy Supreme Court thing that never seems like it's ever going to end. When you give us an update on that, you're on the front lines of battling Trump, and you've got elections. And most importantly, you were just reelected chair for 2 years. Are you still the youngest chair in the country after 2 years?
I am indeed. No one's come to
Um,
take the title yet.
so, here you are, another 2 year term, completely different cycle than last time. Anderson, we just wanted to check in with you, see how you're doing, get your thoughts on what it's like to be on the front lines down there right now, your thoughts about what you guys are going to be doing in 2026 cycle, and also just importantly, give us an update on the battle for the Supreme Court seat.
Well, I joined on Hopium with y'all, I think back in December, or maybe it was November, right after the election had happened, and
Yeah.
sort of gave you all a little bit of a thank you for just the work that you all helped us do in North Carolina last year, because I keep reiterating it to the people. And as I'm traveling out to all my rural counties right now, we just had our election on Saturday, and I was grateful and honored to be reelected to serve the North Carolina Dems again. But as I've been traveling across the state just this last week, a lot of worry, a lot of panic, a lot of fear is coming out of communities across our state right now. And one of the great things that I get to come in and tell people is that we had elected Democrats at the statewide level last year that are going to get to help protect and defend our state against what Donald Trump and Elon Musk right now are doing in our state. And I know that that doesn't sound maybe the greatest for the entire rest of the country that we're looking at, but North Carolina is a state that actually has, to Simon, your point just there, the only Southern attorney general in the entire, or Democratic attorney general in the entire South. And one of the ways in which that Jeff Jackson has really utilized his power as attorney general is to be able to sue the federal government right now against unconstitutional executive orders that are coming down. And so he joined 22 other attorney generals to, or attorneys generals, to be able to sue against the birthright citizenship executive order, to take on Elon Musk accessing our data at the federal level, and also against when we had the first executive order of freezing federal funding for places like or well, not places necessarily, but organizations that funded Medicaid and SNAP benefits into communities, and honestly any other nonprofit that was receiving some form of assistance like that. And so North Carolina is honestly at a much better place, I think, for us to be able to hold the line right now against the Trump administration and actually see where we can push back at a local way. And that's what we're going to keep doing this year too, because I think that North Carolina is in the prime position to be able to flip a United States Senate seat in 2026 with Tom Tillis, who has been the #1 vote getter on every single Trump appointee like Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, and making the case for people that do not belong anywhere near Congress, in my personal opinion. But it is the case that we've got to make for North Carolina in the future. And we were able to do that this last year with you all in a way that I don't think many other states had the opportunity to. And so I come here with gratitude, but I also come here with the hope that I still have about our state and about our country, and the way in which that I've seen so many people stand up and defend it over the last month and a half of this Trump administration that we've had, and we're going to continue and keep doing so.
And for those who are new to our community, the Hopium community raised over $1 million for the North Carolina Democrats. We were the largest investor of any outside entity, and we had these really, really important down ballot wins that I'm really, really proud of. And as you pointed out, Anderson, this is the proof. The proof is in the pudding. I mean, you have a Democratic governor, you have a Democratic attorney general, you had three other statewide wins. And that investment we made was, we had some of our most important down ballot wins in the country under Anderson's leadership in North Carolina last cycle. And we're seeing now Jeff Jackson, going out there and fighting for the people in North Carolina. But speaking of 2024, give us an update on the Supreme Court race and what's happening in the battle over your Supreme Court seat.
Yeah, the biggest headline coming out of North Carolina right now, though, is that we are still on the front lines of democracy. And Simon honestly caught it early in 2023 when he recognized that North Carolina was going to be a battleground state, and the insight into that was really what helped us be able to also break a Republican supermajority in our state house and our state senate last year, and making sure that we have a veto power for our Democratic governor. But what's really happening right now that is the biggest threat to democracy is the fact that Republicans just will not let an election go. Right now, they are challenging 67,000 voters in one election in our state, our Supreme Court election, and they're utilizing the model that Clayton Mitchell and Donald Trump in 2020 developed to be able to deny elections at the federal level, and they're trying now to implement it at the state level too. And so what they're doing is they're challenging voters that are called HAVA voters, which are voters that anybody remembers back in 2002 when the Help Americans Vote Act was passed at the federal level. It was right after 9/11, and it required states to have one of two numbers attached to your voter registration form, either your driver's license number or the last four digits of your social security number. And any state that or any person that got registered to vote before 2002 got grandfathered into that. So right now, Republicans are using that basis of the fact that voters across our states that have been registered to vote before 2002 that don't have one of these two numbers attached to their driver's or attached to their voter registration form are challenged right now in our state to be able to help a Republican win a Supreme Court election that Democrats in North Carolina right now have won by 734 votes. And it's crazy because what they're going to be able to do with this, if they are successful in this court fight right now, they are going to be able to ship this model into other states to be able to also deny election results that the people have fairly gone into a voting booth and voted for. And so we are really on the ground, at least, we are trying to help make sure that everybody is aware and knows about what's happening with the Supreme Court election. But also, we have been in a legal fight for the last 3 months that have really cost our state party almost $3 million in trying to help support the legal fight to be able to make sure that Republicans do not steal this election. And we're really proud of Justice Allison Riggs. She has been our Supreme Court justice candidate that last year won this election by 734 votes. She currently still sits on the Supreme Court right now. But we have been in a court fight from all hell, to be honest with you, trying to make sure that Republicans are not successful in this fight.
And the reason I've asked the Hopium community to chip in to help Anderson is not only to get her off to a strong start after her big reelection victory a few days ago, but also because this has put an incredible financial burden on the state party, and unexpected financial burden on the state party. And we need to make sure they come out roaring strong. I mean, North Carolina was one of our great success stories as a party in 2024, and we need to build on that and have a great cycle in 2026. Anderson, you talked a little bit about how when you're traveling, there's the growing worry. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that since you're out, with voters who may not be in the thick of it every day? Have you seen a growing awareness that Trump may not have been the guy they all thought he was going to be, when he got elected last year?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in Rutherford, Rowan, McDowell, Clay. I'm about to be in Granville County tonight in North Carolina. And, McDowell County the other night, Marion is in Western North Carolina where, Hurricane Helene drastically impacted folks out there. And I'll be honest with you, most of the crowds that I'm speaking in front of are larger than I've ever been in front of in these counties because I've been to them before in the last 2 years too. And a lot of the folks that are there, I had somebody last night or the other night in Marion step up and he said, "How many of you all are just here because you're scared and you think that democracy in this country is already ended?" And every single person in the crowd raised their hand. And they're looking at me, right? They're looking at a 27-year-old who's leading this party right now to say, what do you think that we should be doing? And what are you as the Democratic Party going to do to help stop this? And the response that I have is always going to be the fact that we have got to re-engage in local politics. And I know that people do not want to hear that right now. I know that folks want to sit there and yell and scream at a TV or at your phone, or they want to disengage completely with politics. And I get that because it is scary right now, but that is what Republicans are doing on purpose. And AOC has talked about it. Several members of Congress who have talked about it, like Jasmine Crockett, of the flood the zone that Republicans are doing. Many of these executive orders are illegal. They are going to be challenged in the courts that thankfully Joe Biden over the last 4 years has been putting judges on the bench for, that are going to be able to help stop at least some of this bad. But I do know that people in communities across this state and across this country are going to suffer. And I believe that our party has got to meet them where they are at their suffering, because right now, what's not going to help us is people looking at folks and saying, well, you were stupid enough to vote that way in the first place. Like that is not going to be the way that we bring people back, and that we actually talk to folks who maybe didn't even vote last cycle at all and who we needed to. And right now, what we're doing in North Carolina is we're engaging in community building. We are going out and we are making sure that we're talking to our neighbors and our friends about the fact that what's happening right now, the cuts to Medicaid, the cuts to Social Security, the cuts to our funding from the federal government for the number one economic driver in North Carolina, our public schools and universities, is hurting our communities. And that's the case that we've got to be making across our state right now. And we need people to want to do that. And part of that starts with doing what we need to do in North Carolina, which is taking our fight for this Supreme Court fight and making sure that we're doing our part. Because fighting the Trump administration in every way, shape, and form right now looks like keeping this Supreme Court seat and holding that. Because if we do, we're going to be able to stop him and what he's trying to do at the state level across the United States. And that's really important for us here.
And Anderson, I want to just reflect on something you said. And by the way, thank you. I left for a second to go plug my computer in, and it worked, thank God. So we're having a big conversation inside of the Hopium community about what to do, and what's the most effective way to go about doing what we need to do. Is it contacting reps? Is it having mass protests on the mall in Washington? Is it, there's all these ideas that people are throwing out, daily press conferences. And I don't think any of us had any idea, right, what was going to come in the scale and scope of it, but also how we were all going to respond. And I did an interview with Stephanie Rule, actually when I was out in Arizona, when I saw you at the state chairs meeting in November. And Stephanie asked me about the disengagement of Democrats. And I said, Stephanie, I'm not really worried about that. And she got on me unbelievably on air. Like, I mean, it was a kind of a combative segment. And I said, listen, a lot went wrong for us in 2024, but the thing that was clearly went right was the unbelievable passion intensity of the Democratic grassroots. I mean, we raised more money than we've ever raised before. We had more volunteers than we've ever had before. And that I know that if Trump really does overreach and does what we think he's going to do, they're going to be there for the country the way they've been there for the country, over the last since, 2017 and 2018. And you're starting to see that. And I think that, yeah, it took people a while, right? Of course it did. I mean, 2024 election was terribly disappointing. But I think the thing you're saying now is to me the most important, which is that this has to be from the bottom up and not the top down. People are concerned and worried that our leaders are not adequately fighting. I have those concerns too, to be really honest, right? I wish we were seeing more forceful leadership from Congress, but it's possible that the way this is emerging is going to make it more sustainable over time. Because I think local leaders and local communities are starting to take clear ownership over the protests and showing up outside of a senator's office or a local Tesla or however it manifests. The way our opposition movement is growing and building is not from the top down, it's from the bottom up. And I have grown to really believe that this may actually be a blessing for us over time, because this is going to be a fight not for in 3 months or 6 months. It's going to be years. And I am heartened to hear what you're saying, because I did a town hall. I don't do as many public events as you, right? I live in DC, but I did something in Bethesda, Maryland. It was packed. There was unbelievable intensity in the room. People were ready to go to work, concerned, worried, scared. But you could just feel when you're around people, right? And in these settings that they're ready to go to work. And it's our job, right? It's your job to put them to work, to give them stuff to do. And it's why I really believe that with a new chair and Ken Martin at the DNC and everyone wanting to make the party a 24/7, 365, 50 state thing is universal belief in that. The Democratic Party as an institution and state parties and local parties have an enormous opportunity right now to lead. And I hope, and this is what we're doing in our communication, which is that we're asking our members of Hopium to contact their state and local parties and tell them to get off their ass and get to work and like go organize these protests. And by the way, it's really starting to happen all over the country. I mean, we're getting daily reports of a local party here organizing a protest outside of a state senate office, I mean, a senate office or a house office. And so just talk a little bit more about, you're in the middle of it now. It's all happening in front of our eyes. We're inventing this thing together, right? What's it feel like? What do you think is going to happen? What are you going to do outside of the election stuff, right? What are you thinking about in North Carolina?
Honestly, the engaging of like town halls and the listening tour, I think, is taking us back to an era of politics that we sort of need to get back to. The fact that people have been isolated and the community building has really not been a part of our party in a long time is something where bringing people together is the best thing you can do. But I see my role as a state party right now as ensuring that there is somebody in every single county to make that happen. And right now, that means that we need strong county party chairs and people that actually want to be the brand of the Democratic Party in communities and places right now that are hard to do it in, quite frankly. And that, especially after you just saw Trump and the red wave that we had nationally, feel even more empowered, right, to have this sort of fear mongering apparatus in them. And that was something where I was really scared, to be honest with you. I was on the phone last night with one of my Macon County Dems, and I looked at Karen and I said, Karen, I got to get back out there because I'm nervous about the fact that folks in Macon County, which is a really, really red county, that Democrats are not going to have necessarily the opportunity to win the majority over. But looking at your municipal races in that area and being able to understand like where can we actually gain back power. And I know you said what's not election results, Simon, but I'm this is where my brain still is in so many cases. But I looked at Karen and I was like, Karen, oh my God, like have you given up, or like does Macon County folks, have they given up on the municipal elections? And she said, no, 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 no. She said, we're still finding people to run for those seats. She said, but now we want to know what's next. And to your point about the showing up and calling your elected officials and the what's next phase of that, that's what our party has now got to enter into. And for me, it means how do we do more community building, and whether that mean the town halls or the protests, but also figuring out what do the people in that community need to see more of from our party. And in Clay County and not Macon County, it was a news like a weekly newsletter or a weekly op-ed in their newspaper. They said our newspaper is so Republican here. We just want someone here that's telling us the truth about what's happening, and they'll print anything that you send them. And so I was trying to figure out how do I do data and information gathering, and I think that a lot of people also don't want to hear that we are still in a phase of doing that as a party, and that we are not in a reactionary stage. In my personal opinion, we are trying to be proactive about how we engage in an environment that is rapidly shifting beneath our feet, to be real with you. And that's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but I love the emails that I have been getting personally from folks that are like, Anderson, what can I do? Because I get to connect them to my organizing director, Sarah O'Brien, and we get to put them to work helping us recruit for municipal elections this year. We're helping them put to work on, if you want to call your representatives, we do a training about that each week right now. My training director, Christy, had 225 people that were on her or on one with her last night about how do you engage and how do you influence your local electeds. I mean, I think that people need, to your point, guidance, but that can be in the form of many different things, because I don't think there's just one thing that each person needs to be doing right now. I think that
Yeah,
you can look at what do you have the ability to do right now.
yeah, and one of the things that has been really effective at Hopium, Anderson, is that our community gathers every day where people self-report what they've done and share stories of what's working, and people then all learn from each other all across the country. And so we've created this incredibly powerful learning machine, right? Where we are helping organize literally in all 50 states right now. And people then say, hey, here's what I did today. This worked, this didn't work. I was really encouraged by this. And then these ideas are spreading all across the country every day. And I think that that's what, again, I'm so heartened. I mean, look, this is a brutal time for the country, but I'm so heartened by the response that we've seen of everyday people. And I think that, can you talk a little bit? I could talk to you for hours, Anderson, because I'm love, you are actually in a remarkable moment for your career again, right? Like you had this thing to do in 2023 and 2024, which you did and were successful. And now Anderson has this other thing she has to do that you're incredibly well suited to do this next phase, given the way that you became chair. But talk about the municipal elections so people understand what's coming for you. It's this spring, right? You've got municipal
Mhm.
elections all across the state.
Yeah, I'll be honest with folks. I know right now is chaotic as hell. It feels I got an email yesterday from a trans man in North Carolina that talked about how scared he was about how he may have to leave this state and may have to leave this country. And I get right now how extremely terrifying it is for communities that are the most at threat from this administration. But I also know that in order for me to ever make sure that those communities feel safe and protected here again, I have got to build my party in every single corner of North Carolina. And in order for us to make sure that elections happen in 2028, I have got to make sure that we flip a United States Senate seat here in 2026. And in order for us to take out Tom Tillis, we need to have an army of people across this state that are ready to go into each and every community and help talk about who our nominee is going to be. And that means we need local messengers who are trusted in those communities. And so for me, municipal elections are the way in which that we build our trusted messengers throughout each community in North Carolina. And in 2023, we were able to get almost 50 new elected Democrats across the state of North Carolina. We are going to be able to do that again in 2026 or in 2025 going into 2026. And then we keep building for 2028 as well in this state, because I do believe what we did at the statewide level can come up to our federal level races. And we're going to try to prove that this year. But municipal elections, every day when you turn on your water in the morning, when you turn on your lights, like that is your local government working for you in some way, shape, or form. And I think that people right now, as much as we need to know who represents us in Congress, we also need to know who represents us at a city council and a county commission level. Because what government is going to be able to protect us from the federal government is what your local and your state governments are willing to do right now. And the best case scenario of that I can give you too is coming out of Illinois with JB Pritzker. JB Pritzker's out there being like, Trump, fuck off. Like, you're not touching my state, you're not touching my people. Like, good luck and go get fucked. And he can do that because he's also got a legislature that's Democratic behind him, and he's also got the ability to say, like, you're not doing this to us. And I think it'd be pretty powerful right now to be a state that could look up to the federal government and say, hey, bully, no. And that's exactly what you see from Jeff Jackson. That's exactly what you see from Josh Stein. And that's what you're going to be able to see more of from North Carolina when we gain more power in it. And we do that brick by brick. But as of right now, too, I know that we've got some hella fighters in Congress, including Deborah Ross and Valerie Fouché and Don Davis and Alma Adams, who are working hard for us right now, too. And I know that that feels hard even when we don't have the representation, maybe at the congressional levels that we need across the state. And I know that people feel that way. But I think that us building our party is the best way that we grow it in the future.
Yeah, and I think Anderson, one of the things that's going to, we've talked about inside of Hopium, and the reason why this local representation matters so much is that, cities and counties can pass, when we would, during the Cold War, we would often as a country condemn something that Russia did. And that what we would do is that, at the UN or Secretary of State or President would issue a statement saying, we're condemning this activity for these following reasons. And I think that one of the things we're going to see is we're going to see cities and counties start condemning the Trump administration and Republicans for things they're doing to their community. These are things that can pass a city council or can be, done through a county government or done through not your state legislature, right? But the governor. And I think this issue of condemning from government about things that are happening to their people is going to be one of the tools that we're going to start developing. I mean, imagine if 1,500 local city councils all across the country condemned Trump for X thing, right? For cutting the funding back to their communities and got that in the local paper. And they were able then to take that condemnation and bring it to the citizens of their state and say, let me explain to you why we passed this resolution to condemn what the president's doing, because it's going to hurt all of you. And so there are things with municipal power and local power that are going to become possible for us that then make them also powerful communicators and interpreters of what Trump is doing back into local communities. And I think that it's great to hear all this, Anderson. I knew this would be a fun interview because you're tireless, you work your ass off, and you're ambitious and aggressive, which is what you have to be in a time of challenge for the country. And so Really proud to be on your team again this cycle. I do believe the work we did with you last cycle was Hopium's most important work and meaningful work and successful work. And now we got to build on that and go tackle these new challenges that we have. And I know I'm grateful to know that we're going to be in the foxhole together here again over the next 2 years, Anderson. So thank you for everything.
Thank you. No one else I'd rather be in it with, Simon Rosenberg, than you and the rest of your community, to be real with you. So thank y'all so much for everything.
Okay. Good luck, Anderson, and everybody. You heard the interview. Please pony up a few bucks that you got to help Anderson get off to a good start to defray the cost of this insane Supreme Court challenge that's going on, and to help, us model how one of the ways that we're going to respond to Trump. And because there are going to be many, many ways. This is a time of innovation and creativity and reimagining our politics. And I think something I just want to close with, and Anderson said, is that a lot of the work we've done in recent years has been Zoom based, right? Where we've used the power of Zoom and organizing. Anderson said something that I have also grown to believe is the case, that I think the next 2 years is going to be a lot about in-person activity, people being with one another again, connecting after getting to the other side of COVID and how we were all pulled apart. We now all need to come together. And I have been trying to do as many events as possible in person because I'm strengthened and heartened by the human interaction and by just being with others in a time of challenge. But also, to your point, Anderson, it's creating this other dynamic where we're pulling out of isolation, pulling out of the digital space that we live in, and reconnecting with our fellow Americans in a time of crisis. And I think it's great to hear, because I feel like other people are experiencing what you're experiencing now, which is that people need to be in physical proximity with one another in this time. And so thank you for your leadership. Love you. And everybody, do what you can for Anderson, and we'll see you soon. Take care.